watching. I was tasked with a couple of stories, 2, 3, 4, 15 or so, on childhood activities. I was born and raised in a little town called Groves. It's down in the mid-county area. Some of y'all may have heard of it. I was raised with 4 other boys from across the street, of which their oldest was about 6 years older than me. Their youngest was my age. Matter of fact, he is actually 5 days older than me, so we were the same age, in diapers together, if you will. We spent all of our days playing around in that area, flooding out the neighborhood when the rain would come so we could go crawfishing, flood the neighborhood so that we could actually canoe up and down in the ditch and so forth. But one of the fondest memories I have is there was an area of woods. We called it the bunny trails growing up. And in these woods, they had a lot of tallow trees. It was a heavy, heavy wooded area, a bunch of tallow trees that grew. And they would grow 20 feet tall, and they'd die out, and other ones would come up. But we were up in this thicket, and then we learned by mistake that if you jump from one tree to the next, if it was a smaller tree, you could actually ride that tree down. It would bend under the weight of our young age, probably around the age of 9, 10 years of age. Well, we were jumping from one tree to the next, riding them down when, I was maybe one of the chunkier ones growing up. So I was up in this one tallow tree, and we kept jumping to this one particular one because it seemed to be the funnest ride. Well, as I jumped and grabbed hold of it, part of the way down, let's say we were probably about 10 feet in the air when it snapped. Down I came. It was like one of them slow motion deals, where like Tom Cruise was falling off the building in one of the Mission Impossibles. Looking up, it's kind of the way I felt as I'm holding part of this tallow tree, and I hit flat on my back in a decent sized water puddle, about 4 inches deep. And I just kind of sat there, or laid there as it was, just going, stuck in there. All my buddies come running around wanting to know if I was still alive. So after I caught my breath, the water came back in up above my ears. One of them reached down and grabbed my hand, pulled me up. And we just kind of shook it all off, went back to jumping. About a week later, we come back up into the same bunny trails, and we were going through. In that one particular spot I had fallen, lo and behold, there was a perfect imprint in my entire torso from about my thighs all the way to mid-level of the arms, body. We thought it was kind of funny as I laid back down in it, and everybody just laughed. Of course, back in them days, we didn't have cameras like you youngsters do today. Every time something happens, you want to pull it out, put it on that thing called social media. Careful, social media can get you in trouble. Anyway, so we'll fast forward a couple of years, and we'll just run on off into a little bit older. We're going to say I'm around 11 at this time. So me and that friend of mine that was 5 days older, hey Seth, in case you're watching, we would run the bunny trails, and we'd run around in the wooded areas close to our house hunting. Wasn't a firearm, because it was a pellet rifle, 22 caliber, by the way. And just so you know, a 22 caliber pellet rifle is not a firearm, so therefore it was legal for us to carry it around. It just wasn't legal for us to be shooting birds, because at the time, Groves was a bird sanctuary, and we were actually going after a squirrel, which, by the way, wasn't squirrel season. Middle of the summer, a couple of kids off, from school, parents are running around doing different things. So me and old Seth, we had this one squirrel pinned down in the hunker of a tree trunk with the branch coming up. He was pinned down there pretty good. We could just barely see his top of his head. So we're running around this tree, me and him, trying to get the best shot, pumping up our little pellet rifles and spitting the lead up into it, trying to shoot this. Part of the problem is this tree was right on the edge of the main road running through Groves Town, which was 39th Street, close to Pier Atlantic. Well, as we're sitting there, lost track of time, lost track of how many shots we fired at it, and the squirrel still pinned down there, giving us a little fit. because see, done this, she does the challenge. What we decided to do was continue. We're hard-headed. Well, after about, I'm gonna say somewhere around 30 minutes of trying to get this one squirrel, we hear this horn honk. Well, as we turned around, yeah, you guessed it. It was the Grosse Police Department. Sitting in his car, he's looking at us and he's just giving us the finger like, come here. In another scene of a movie, Seth's on my right, I'm on his left. We turn around together and we look back and there's old Steve Savoy doing the old finger thing saying, come here. We looked at each other and we bolted. Why did we bolt? Seemed like the thing to do at the time, right? A couple of juvenile delinquents running from the law. Well, thing about it is no reason to run. Old Steve Savoy knew our parents, knew exactly where we lived, and knew exactly how to get us. So anyway, we bolted. We run through the bunny trails like we was gonna go to the other side of the neighborhood. We come up through behind the little cut through the house back there, climbed up, went and hid in my bedroom in my house. See, my mom was gone at the time. I was supposed to be staying with his parents, so we didn't go to his parents' house because we knew, they'd show up over there, so we just hiding out in my bedroom. Lo and behold, we weren't in there just a few minutes when all of a sudden we heard a car pull up. I looked out the window, and it was the hood, a brown car, just like what Steve was driving. So we just kind of hid out. Didn't make a word. We heard knocks. Nothing. We heard knocks. We didn't do nothing. So we heard car pull out, leave the driveway. I snuck around to the front side of the house, looked up, the brown car was leaving. But guess what? It wasn't Steve Savoy in the brown police car with the little lights on top whatsoever. Happened to be my mom's Avon lady. So we hid from the Avon lady. It didn't really matter too much because later that afternoon when my dad come home from work, Steve Savoy done gave him a phone call, told him what was going on. Yeah, no, it wasn't on the cell phone. Back then we had the ones that were on the wall, had a long wire hooked up to it. You actually had to turn the dial. Those are the days. Anyhow, so that was another story there where I hid from the law, or the Avon lady. But anyway, so long story short is you can't run from the law because they will find you. And my law enforcement, I support. Anyway, so let's go on and see. We're going back up to about, let's say, ninth grade maybe. Played football for PNG. We played the first string both ways. I played left guard, middle linebacker defense. Middle linebacker defense was my favorite position, by the way, because back in the day when I played, you could actually inflict a little bit of pain on people without getting in trouble. So what we would do is we'd get in our huddles, just like you see on TV these days, and they would call the plays while a tight end or one of the backs would run the play in from the sidelines as they was swapping them out in between downs. Well, I may have made a bad block. Quarterback there, his name's Todd Guidry. Hi Todd, if you're watching, still a fan. He got up in the middle of that huddle and he was giving me a good cussing. I don't really take kindly to cussings, good ones or bad ones. So I told him right there, we was playing Neyland, I think, may have been. But we're on the high school football field in the middle of a game. And I told him, I said, Todd, hey bro, cut it out. We made another play or two, come back in there, and he's still giving me the rundown on that. And I told him for the last time, I said, Todd, don't cuss me, man. Well, anyway, he gave me another cuss or two, and then by that time the play come in, just so happened to be a pass. Made up in my mind. So I got down there in my offensive position as a left guard. When I sat, I looked up at that 3 technique on defense across from me. I told him, I looked him in the eyes. I said, it's a pass, and I'm setting up to my left. His eyes got kind of big, like, what's he talking about? So as soon as the ball was light, I set up in a defensive blocking position to my left. He run right behind me, between me and the guard. He hit Todd Guidry so hard in the back before Todd Guidry ever had a chance to turn around and throw the pass. We got back in that huddle, and I said, Todd, don't cuss me again. To this day, I don't think that man ever has. Anyway, so that's 3 of the stories that Cassie had given me or asked me to talk about. So anyhow, we can go with one more real quick one perhaps. I was always kind of maybe a little daredevil, walk, I was a little envelope pusher, walk on the wild side sometimes. Well, we bought this thing when my parents did, right about that time. It was called a Honda Odyssey. It's similar to like what you guys would think is a Can-Am. The roll bars all around it, but back in the day it was only a 250 belt drive, which would slip in the mud. Don't do a belt drive if you ever get any type of ATV. Belt drives aren't really great, unless it's totally encapsulated where it keeps the water and mud out of it, then you won't slip. So anyway, this thing's brand new. Me and my dad go down to the Honda shop down there on Gulfway Drive, pick it up. Brand new, I'm telling you, probably ain't ran 30 minutes total tops. We unloaded it out of the truck over at a field next to my grandfather's, and we get that thing done, get it fired up, get in there, and it had a 4-point hookup system. Come over the shoulders, tie in. So I was going to challenge it. My dad said, see what it'll do. So, hey, I wanted to see what it would do. So I just take that thing and the gas is on there and the handlebars, it's a fancy looking little handlebar system, kind of like you would see in a fighter pilot or something. Anyway, we get this thing, man, and I just nail it and I cut the wheel. In the first 10 feet, I turned that thing over on its side. The engine died, and I could just hear my dad hollering and screaming. Yeah, he wasn't too worried about me because he knew I was a little hard-headed, but he was just worried because I done folded a fender on this thing. So anyhow, so that little thing right there would run. It'd run like the dickens through the mud and all. But it was a fun thing. So there's some words of wit for you. Just because it'll run like a dog, don't mean you need to run it that fast or that hard. Take your time and save on your insurance also. Thank you. Have a good day.